जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवर धारी। जय गिरिवर धारी। जय गोपी जन वल्लभ जय गिरिवर धारी। जय गिरिवर धारी। जय यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यशोदानंदन व्रज जनरंजन। यमुनतीरावनचारी। यमुनतीरावनचारी। जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। जय राधा माधव जय कुंज बिहारी। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। हरे कृष्णा 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 हरे हरे। हरे राम 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 हरे हरे। जय राधा कलचंजी राधा कलचंजी श्री राधे। जय राधा कलचंजी राधा कलचंजी श्री राधे। Jaya Gauranitai, 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 Jaya Gauranitai. Jaya Jaya Prabhupada, 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 Jaya Jaya Prabhupada. Nitai Gaura Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Hari Bol, Nitai Gaura Hari Bol. Jai Om Vishnupad Paramahamsa Parivajakaacharya, His Divine Grace, A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada ki Jai. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Samaveda Gaura Bhakta Vrinda ki Jai. Gaur Premanande, Hari Hari Bol, all glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glorious assembled devotees, Hare Krishna, all glories, all glories, all glories to Sri Guru and Sri Gauranga. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayamudirayet Nashtaprayesha Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki Krishnaya Vasudevaya Devaki Nandanaya Cha Nanda Gopakumaraya Govindaya Namo Namaha. Let me therefore offer my respectful obeisances unto the Lord, who has become the son of Vasudeva, the pleasure of Devaki, the boy of Nanda, and the other cowherd men of Vrindavana, and the enlivener of cows and senses. Granthara Srimad Bhagavatam ki Jai. Om Ajnanatimira Anthasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamahyam Tadati Swapadantikam. Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Padakamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sahagana Raghunathanvitam Tam Sajivam Sadvaitam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sahagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha. He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandho Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostate Tapta Kanchana Gaurangi Radhe Vrindavaneshwari Rishabhanu Sute Devi Pranamami Haripriye Vancha Kalpatarubhyascha Kripa Sindhubhya eva cha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha. Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhara Srivasadi Gaura Bhakta Vrinda. Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. Today we'll be discussing Canto 2, Chapter 9, verse number 33, the first of the Chaturshloki Bhagavatam, and the following two verses after that. Barring the last verse, we'll be covering the first three today. So everybody will read the verse. You can repeat after me. Aham eva samevagre. Verse number 33. Yeah. Chantuchu, chapter 9, verse number 33. Aham eva samevagre. Nandyad sadasat param. Paschadaham yad etaccha. Yovashishyeta sosmyaham. Aham eva samevagre. Nanyad sadasat param. Paschadaham yadetaccha. Yovashishyeta sosmyaham. Would any of you like to go? Try reading it. Aham eva samevagre. Anyat sadasat param. Paschadaham yadetaccha. Yovashishyeta sosmyaham. Anybody else? Aham eva samevagre. Anyad sadasat param. Paschadaham yadetaccha. Yovashishyeta sosmyaham. Aham, I, the personality of Godhead. Eva, certainly. Asam, existed. Eva, only. Agre, before the creation. Na, never. Anyat, anything else. Yet, all those. Sat, the effect. Asat, the cause. Param, the supreme. Paschat, at the end. Aham, I, the personality of Godhead. Yet, all these. Etat, creation. Cha, also. Ya, everything. Avashishyeta, remains. Sa, that. Asmi, I am. Aham, I, the personality of God. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada Ki Jai. Okay. Somebody, one of you can read the translation.
Brahma, it is I, the personality of Godhead, who was existing before the creation, when there was nothing but myself, nor was there the material nature, the cause of this creation. That which you see now is also I, the personality of Godhead, and after annihilation what remains will also be I, the personality of Godhead.
We can take turns reading the purport paragraph by paragraph. I'll go ahead and read the first one. We should note very carefully that the personality of Godhead is addressing Lord Brahma and specifying with great emphasis himself, pointing out that it is he, the personality of Godhead, who existed before the creation, it is he only who maintains the creation, and it is he only who remains after the annihilation of creation. Brahma is also the creation of Supreme Lord. Brahma is also the creation of Supreme Lord. The impersonalist puts forth the theory of oneness in the sense that Brahma, also being the same principle of I, because he is the emanation from the I, the absolute truth, is identical with the Lord. The principle of I, and that there is thus nothing more than the principle of I, as explained in this verse. Accepting the argument of the impersonalist, it is to be admitted that the Lord is a creator, I, and the Brahma is a created I. Therefore, there is a difference between the two I's, namely the predominator I and the predominated I. Therefore, there are still two I's, even accepting the argument of the impersonalist. But we must note carefully that these two I's are accepted in Vedic literature, Katha Upanishad, in the sense of quality, Katha Upanishad says, Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam, Eko Bahunam Yo Vidati Kaman. The creator I and the created I are both accepted in the Vedas as qualitatively one because both of them are Nityas and Chetanas. But the singular I is the creator I, and the created I's are of plural number because there are many I's like Brahma and those generated by Brahma. It is a simple truth. The father creates or begets a son, and the son also creates many other sons, and all of them may be one as human beings, but at the same time from the father, the son and the grandsons are all different. The son cannot take the place of the father, nor can the grandsons. Simultaneously, the father, the son, and the grandson are one and different also. As human beings, they are one, but as relativities, they are different. Therefore, the relativities of the creator and the created, or the predominator and the predominated, have been differentiated in the Vedas by saying that the predominator I is the feeder of the predominated I's, and thus there is a vast difference between the two principles of I. Another person can read the next paragraph.
In another feature of this verse, no one can deny the personalities of both the Lord and Brahma. Therefore, in the ultimate issue, both the predominator and the predominated are persons. This conclusion refutes the conclusion of the impersonalist that in the ultimate issue, everything is impersonal. This impersonal feature, stressed by the less intelligent impersonalist school, is refuted by pointing out that the predominator, I, is the absolute truth, and that he is a person. The predominated I, Brahma, is also a person, but he is not the absolute. For realization of one's self in spiritual psychology, it may be convenient to assume oneself to be the same principle as the absolute truth, but there is always the difference of the predominated and the predominator. But as clearly pointed out here in this verse, which is grossly misused by the impersonalists, Brahma is factually seeing face to face his predominator, Lord, who exists in his transcendental, eternal form. Even after the annihilation of the material creation, the form of the Lord, as seen by Brahma, existed before the creation of Brahma, and the material manifestation with all the ingredients and agents of material creation are also energetic expansions of the Lord. And after the exhibition of the Lord's energy comes to a close, what remains is the same personality of Godhead. Therefore, the form of the Lord exists in all circumstances of creation, maintenance, and annihilation. The Vedic hymns confirm that this fact in the statement, Vasudevo va idam agra asin na brahma na cha shankara eko narayana asin na brahma neshana, etc. Before the creation there was none except Vasudeva. There was neither Brahma nor Shankara. Only Narayan was there, and no one else. Neither Brahma nor Ishan. Shripad Shankaracharya also confirms in his comments on the Bhagavad Gita that Narayan, or the personality of Godhead, is transcendental to all creation, but that the whole creation is the product of Avyakta. Therefore, the difference between the created and the creator is always there, although both the creator and created are of the same quality.
The only feature of the statement is that the supreme truth is Bhagavan, or the personality of Godhead. The personality of Godhead and his kingdom have already been explained. The kingdom of Godhead is not void as conceived by the impersonalists. The Vaikuntha planets are full of transcendental variegatedness. Included the four-handed residents of those planets, with great opulence of wealth and prosperity, and there are even airplanes and other amenities required for high-grade personalities. Therefore, the personality of God exists before the creation, and he exists with all transcendental variegatedness. And the Vaikuntha Lokas also accepted in the Bhagavad Gita as being of the Sanatana nature, are not annihilated even after the annihilation of the manifested cosmos. Those transcendental planets are of a different nature altogether, and that nature is not subjected to the rules or regulations of material creation, maintenance, or annihilation. The existence of the personality of Godhead implies the existence of the Vaikuntha Lokas as the existence of a king implies the existence of a kingdom.
In various places in Srimad Bhagavatam and in other revealed scriptures, the existence of the personality of Godhead is mentioned. For example, in Srimad Bhagavatam 2.8.10, Maharaj Pariksha asks, Sachapi yacha purusho vishvasityupabhava katva mayama How does the personality of Godhead, the cause of creation, maintenance, and annihilation, who is always freed from the influence of the illusory energy, and is the controller of the same, lie in everyone's heart? Similar also is the question of Viduras. Tatvanam bhagavam tvesham gatida pratisankramaha tatremam ka upashiram ka
Sridhar Swami explains in his notes, during the annihilation of the creation, who serves the Lord lying on the Shesha, etc. This means that the Transcendental Lord, with all his name, fame, quality, and paraphernalia, exists eternally. The same confirmation is also in the Kashi Kanda of the Skanda Purana. In connection with Dhruva Charita, it is said there, Na Chavante Piyadvakta Mahyam Pralaya Pidhi Ato Chuto Kile Loke Sa Eka Sarvago Vyaha. Even the devotees of the personality of Godhead are not annihilated during the period of the entire annihilation of the material world, not to speak of the Lord himself. The Lord is ever existent in all three stages of material change.
The impersonalist adduces no activity in the Supreme, but in this discussion between Brahma and the Supreme Personality of Godhead, the Lord is said to have activities also, and he has his form and quality. The activities of Brahma and other demigods during the maintenance of creation are to be understood as the activities of the Lord. The king or the head executive of a state may not be seen in government offices, for he may be engaged in royal comforts. Yet it should be understood that everything is being done under his direction, and everything is at his command. The personality of Godhead is never formless. In this material world, he may not be visible in his personal form to the less intelligent class of men, and therefore he may sometimes be called formless, but actually he is always in his eternal form, in his Vaikuntha planets, as well as in other planets of the universes as different incarnations. The example of the sun is very appropriate in this connection. The sun in the night may not be visible to the eyes of men in the darkness, but the sun is visible wherever it has risen. That the sun is not visible to the eyes of the inhabitants of a particular part of the earth doesn't mean that the sun has no form.
In the Brihad Anyayaka Upanishad 141, there's a hymn, Atma Vedam Agri Asit Purusha Vidyaha. This mantra indicates the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Krishna, even before the appearance of the Purusha incarnation. In the Bhagavad Gita 15:18, it is said that the Lord Krishna is Purushottam because he is the Supreme Purusha, transcendental even to the Purusha Akshara and the Purusha Kshara. The Akshara Purusha, or the Vishnu, throws his glance over Prakriti, or material nature, but the Purushottam existed even before that, and the Brihad Anyayaka Upanishad therefore confirms the statement of the Bhagavad Gita, and Lord Krishna is the Supreme Person, Purushottam.
In some of the Vedas, it is also said that in the beginning only the impersonal Brahman existed. However, according to this verse, the impersonal Brahman, which is the glowing effulgence of the body of the Supreme Lord, may be called the immediate cause. But the cause of all causes, or the remote cause, is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. the Lord's impersonal feature is existent in the material world because by material senses or material eyes, the Lord cannot be seen or perceived. One has to spiritualize the senses before one can expect to see or perceive the Supreme Lord. But he is always engaged in his personal capacity, and he is eternally visible to the inhabitants of Vaikuntha Loka, face to face. Therefore he is materially impersonal, just as the executive head of the state may be impersonal in the government offices, although he is not impersonal in the government house. Similarly, the Lord is not impersonal in his abode, which is always. Narastra Kahukam, as stated in the very beginning of the Bhagavatam. Therefore both the impersonal and personal features of the Lord are acceptable, as mentioned in the revealed scriptures. This personality of Godhead is very emphatically explained in the Bhagavad Gita in connection with the verse Brahmana hi pratistatam, Bhagavad Gita 14:27. Therefore, in all ways, the confidential part of spiritual knowledge is realization of the personality of Godhead, and not his impersonal Brahman feature. One should therefore have his ultimate aim of realization not in the impersonal feature, but in the personal feature of the Absolute Truth. The example of the sky within the pot and the sky outside the pot may be helpful to the student for his realization of the all-pervading quality of the cosmic consciousness of the Absolute Truth. But that does not mean that the individual part and parcel of the Lord becomes the Supreme by a false claim. It means only that the conditioned soul is a victim of the illusory energy and her last snare. To claim to be one with the cosmic consciousness of the Lord is the last trap set by the illusory energy, or Daivi Maya. Even in the impersonal existence of the Lord, as it is the material creation, one should aspire for personal realization of the Lord, and that is the meaning of Pashad Aham Yad Echak Yayo Vaishayata Smosmen Aham.
Brahmaji also accepted the same truth when he was instructing Narada. He said, Soyam te pihitas tata Bhagavan Vishvabhavana, Bhagavatam 2:750. There is no other cause of all causes than the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari. Therefore this verse, Aham Eva, never indicates anything other than the Supreme Lord, and one should therefore follow the path of the Brahma Sampradaya, or the path from Brahmaji to Narada to Vyasadeva, etc., and make it a point in life to realize the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Hari, or Lord Krishna. This very confidential instruction to the pure devotees of the Lord was also given to Arjuna and to Brahma in the beginning of the creation. The demigods like Brahma, Vishnu, Maheshvar, Indra, Chandra, and Varuna are undoubtedly different forms of the Lord for execution of different functions, the different elemental ingredients of material creation, as well as the multifarious energies, also may be of the same personality of Godhead, but the root of all of them is the Supreme Personality of Godhead, Sri Krishna. One should be attached to the root of everything rather than bewildered by the branches and leaves. That is the instruction given in this verse.
Able. This purport, although it is big, it has so much essence, and the essence of philosophy is really compressed into this one purport. Our acharyas time and time again, they tried to condense the philosophy, right? Exists the Vedas, right? Vasudev compiled the Vedanta Sutra, which is basically the summary of all the Vedas, and Bhagavatam is the commentary on the Vedanta Sutra. So, and we also see that in the Bhagavad Gita also, we have Chatashloki Bhagavad Gita. So there are 4 verses in Bhagavad Gita which explains the essence and which has the essence of the Bhagavad Gita. Similarly, in the Bhagavatam also, right, these 4 verses, starting from now until the next 3 more after this, contain the essence of the content in Bhagavatam. And this is a direct instruction from Lord Krishna to Brahma. So we also see that there are many conversations in the Bhagavatam that are being layered, right? We have the conversation of Sutta Goswami and the sages of Naimisharanya. within that also we have the more famous, let's say, what Bhagavatam is more well known for, the conversation between Parikshit Maharaj and Shukadeva Goswami, right? And we have a series of questions and answers that have been happening up until this point. We have Parikshit Maharaj asked Shukadeva Goswami, what is the duty of a person, right, about to die? Right? Shukadeva Goswami actually answers all of the questions. And after that, Parikshit Maharaj asks more questions, right? And the answers and discussion following that is the rest of the Bhagavatam, right? So the Bhagavatam is transcendental and chronological from this point, right? Also, and it's transcendental from the beginning, but it's also chronological at this point. We have two Manu, Swayambhu Manu, and Vaivasvata Manu. We also have the series of events that are going on in the Bhagavatam now will be chronological. And it's being followed in a sequence, right? And we can also see that within this, within this verse, right, we can talk about Lord Brahma, right? These are answers by Lord Krishna to Brahma. And Lord Brahma, when he came into existence, he was very confused. He did not know where he was. It was dark everywhere. There was darkness all around, physically and metaphysically, right? Physically in the sense where it was actually dark, and metaphysically where, he did not know what to do. He was very confused, right? And he surrendered unto the Lord and he performs austerities, right? And the Lord, when he's pleased with Brahmaji, he actually addresses him, right? And Lord Brahma asks a series of questions to Lord Krishna. And the Lord answers those questions. And the answers to those questions are in 7 verses. Now, the answers to those questions are 7 verses, and Sri Vallabhacharya, which is another Acharya, and he refers to this as Sapta Shloki, which is the essence of Bhagavatam in 7 verses. Srila Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur is an Acharya, right? And he refers to it as Chatushloki, which is 4 verses. The reason being because the first 3 are kind of a lead up, and it's kind of a build up to these 4 verses that are being told here. So you can imagine the importance of these 4 verses that are going to be discussed, right? Of which we're discussing the first one right now in detail. Right? And we also can see that Brahma's journey, in a way, it's meant to mirror, right? Our journey is meant to mirror Brahma's life journey as well. We see that Brahma was born in darkness. Brahma is enlightened, and he acts as an instrument to the Lord's will. Similarly, even we are born in darkness, right? When Brahma was born in darkness, he heard from Lord Vishnu, tapa, 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 which means, meditate upon him, right? And we have devotees today, right? We have, when we go to temple, they say japa, 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 right? So when we also need to do our sadhana, we also need to do our endeavor, right, to surrender unto the Lord and to do devotional service. Once we do that, right, we are gradually elevated to the platform of Bhakti Yoga. And, the end goal is always act as an instrument to the Lord's will, right? So our life can also, mirror Lord Brahma's in a way. Right? And Krishna says in the Bhagavad Gita, chapter 11, verse 33, Nimitta matram bhava savyasachi. Right? He says, O savyasachi, you can be but an instrument in the fight. He uses this name in the Bhagavad Gita only once. Savyasachi is the name of Arjuna, which refers to his ambidextrous ability to shoot arrows. He can shoot arrows with his left and right hand. And if you look in this verse, right, he's asking Arjuna to be an instrument in the fight, and he's also acknowledging his ability. So we can also see that, generally when we might go out, it's generally a common misconception that, somebody might tell us that we might lose our freedom in surrendering to the Lord, right? I have to give up a lot of things. I have to do a lot of austerity, right? Why should I do this? Why can't I enjoy, right? Factually, you're saying this is enjoyment, but I'm not really enjoying it. You're having to get up really early in the morning, chanting japa. Why all this is necessary, right? But, factually, human will, we always have the conflict between human will versus divine will. But the truth is that human will is founded in divine will, right? If Krishna wanted us to be just plain instruments, he would have done so. But we are conscious beings with free will, right? And when there is a loving relationship between the Lord and the surrendered soul, there is a loving reciprocation that's being seen. And an example of such is between Krishna and Arjuna in the Bhagavad Gita. Right? Krishna only enhanced Arjuna's abilities. Arjuna was a very skilled warrior, but with Krishna's presence, his qualities were amplified. His skills were amplified. Right? And he was never hindered by the Lord on his chariot. In fact, Lord Krishna on his chariot was a symbol of victory. Hanuman was with him. All the demigods were with him. Right? He was, and Lord Krishna was planning everything in advance. Arjuna did not know what was going to happen the next moment. Krishna was planning everything for him from A to Z. Right? Similarly, when we take shelter of Krishna, our abilities are also amplified, as our purpose for action is in the right place. We bring the best within us outside. So when we actually endeavor to do better in devotional service, when we actually endeavor to chant, when we endeavor to read Srila Prabhupada's books and understand the Lord, we are making an attempt to be our real self. And our real self is, our real identity is that we are the servant of the servant of the servant of Lord Krishna. And if we are serving our true purpose, and that if we actually serve what we're meant to serve, then our abilities are also perfect. Right? When we are dovetailed with the complete whole, we are also aiming towards perfection. So we can always look at spirituality in the sense where spirituality is not giving up our individuality. It's about realizing our individuality. And be yourself, and being ourself means being our higher self, not just what we are right now. Right? And for that, we have to take shelter of a higher authority. We take shelter of Guru, we take shelter of Shastra, which are perfect. Why are they perfect? Because they're coming from the Lord who is all perfect. And the results of this, right, Sanjaya says in the Bhagavad Gita, Yatra Yogeshwara Krishna, Tatta Partho Dhanuttaraha, Tatta Shri Vijayo Bhuta Dhruva Netar Matar Mama. Wherever there is Krishna, the master of mystics, and wherever there is Arjuna, the supreme archer, there will also certainly be opulence, victory, extraordinary power, and morality. So, proof enough, right? So you're being guaranteed at this point, right? Just pray to Krishna, surrender unto Krishna. That's it. Right? Now, in this verse, right, as a prelude to this, right, Brahma asked Krishna a number of questions, and Krishna is answering these questions to Brahma. So the question, let me paraphrase, that Brahma asked Krishna is, "My Lord, you are transcendental, right? How do you manifest yourself in this form, in this world?" And in this translation, as you can see, Krishna is saying, "I alone, who was in the beginning, I alone, who am existing right now, I alone will exist in the future." Now, one thing we can ask is, how do we make sense of that? We're all here, right? There are so many living entities. How do we understand that everything is Krishna, right? He can't be, he's basically, if you look at it from, just a literary perspective, right? You're seeing that he's addressing himself as a singular form. It's not plural, right? The way we can make sense of this, actually, before I say it, I like some, do you know the answer to this? Why Krishna might be saying I, but what is, even though he's saying I, how do we justify the plurality in terms of all living entities? Any lucky guesses? Or you might know, it's not lucky, but go ahead. No. Anybody else?
Srila Prabhupada's hitting this in the purport. He says that that the I, like the Father, he is I, but when he gives progeny, they are also I's. So you can understand that everything is, the lineage of the family is coming from him, but that doesn't mean that the original, or the Father isn't the original I. So similarly, Krishna, being the first I, is impregnating the nature with the souls, and so therefore they have their individuality too.
Yep.
Is this correct?
Yeah, that's correct. Thank you.
Better be.
Yeah. So, the I in this verse is referring to himself and his energy, right? And all of his manifestations. So when we say I, it's us. It's nothing else but us. When Krishna says I, it means everything, that's part of him as well. So this whole universe, everything that exists, anything that you see exists, it's also coming from him. So therefore, when he says I, it refers to that, right? And when we look, Prabhupada also talks about impersonalism very much in this verse, right? We can consider two classes of people, right? One the atheist and one the impersonalist. For an atheist, right? So let's consider from the hierarchy of their realizations. The atheist, first things, polytheism is the lowest form of realization. You think there's a lot of gods, it's very confusing, right? It's the lowest form. And after that, monotheism. Okay, there is a singular person who is supplying everything that living entities need. But the atheist views it, well, okay, sure, if this, there's actually a singular person who supplies everything. And the atheist views that no God is the highest truth. Whatever I see in front of me is what exists. Whatever I do not see in front of me does not exist. But, we're subject to four defects, right? We're subject to imperfect senses. What you see is not exactly what might exist. And what you might not see doesn't mean that it is not in existence. We don't see planets with our naked eye, but they do exist, right? So, and also the Mayavadi view, and the impersonalists, right, go with the realization, okay, the lowest form of realization is that there are many gods, right? And then there is one God, right? And there is one God, and okay, the highest form of realization is there is no one except God, and everybody is God. So the impersonalist form of realization says, you are God, I am God, we're all God, right? But that form of theory, right, there is no diversity in that. If we look at it, if we look at each other in the room, we are all similar in the sense where we're all human. We're all having similar body structure. We have two eyes, we have a nose, we have a mouth. But at the same time, we're all not clones of each other. We don't do the same thing at the same time. We don't talk at the same time, right? We're very different. We have a lot of diversity within us. So the fact that, everybody is God, right? That does not really justify diversity, is what it is. And, it says in this verse, Nityo Nityanam, Chetanas Chetananam, Eko Bahunam, Yo Vatati Kaman. Nitya, Bhagavan, is a singular. Nityanam are plural jivas, or living beings. Nityo Nityanam, we are many, but God is one. There is no limit to jivas, and no one can count them. The word Ananta means that they're without limit. All these jiva, living entities, are being maintained by the Supreme One. Now, we see that Mayavadis, they believe that personalistic realization is a low-level realization. It's a preliminary form. First, you think that there is one person who's controlling all of us, and then later you realize that we're all God. But factually, that's not true, right? Negation of anything that exists here is not what exists in the spiritual world. So then one train of thought is that since we're all existent, since we're all subject to four defects, right, and we're imperfect, the perfect must be the negation, the exact opposite of what we are here. So, okay, so we're existent, we're different, so therefore there's nothing that exists. Everybody's the same. Right? That's, but obviously, simply negation of what's here is not what's in the spiritual world. In fact, what is here is but a perverted reflection of what is in the spiritual world. Right? We see that, anything that you might find great in this world may not be so great in the spiritual world. Like, if you go to a workplace, right? People aspire to become the boss of the boss of the boss of the boss, CEO, right? In the spiritual world, what's actually really great is being the servant of the servant of the servant of the servant, right? So we see the exact opposite that's being happening, right? And we see that all living entities, right? They have, they're covered primarily with 5 shells or sheets, right? Called panchakoshas. And they're in the bodily conception of life. Every living entity is being covered with these 5, right? And hence, because of these 5 coverings, they're unable to realize their real self and their eternal relationship with a super soul who's eternally present with them. Now, we can actually observe this in practicality also with a lot of examples. The first one is just eating food. If you see some animals, right, they don't have feelings of, okay, me, you, no. Once they see food, is this food or is this not food, right? That's the first level of covering that they have. Next, we have survival consciousness, the next higher form of realization, survival consciousness. Fight and flight. At least you're broadening your circle, not just with yourself, but my family, my relatives. These are my colleagues. So you're acknowledging the existence of other living entities as well. The next form is higher form of realization. One has perceptions, and one has response to perceptions. For example, you have the concept of humanity. You have various isms that are in society, right? You have social activities. You feel good when you give money to other people, social service. All of this come under the next form, higher form of realization. And the next form after that is when one understands that he's not the body but the soul. So the one before, we're saying that we are, we should help other people, but we're not recognizing the presence of the soul. The soul is in the higher form of realization, right? And we see, but God is not in this picture at all, right? We just realize that we are not this body, but the soul. And the highest form of realization is Bhagavan, Bhakta, or Bhakti. Realizing that there is, a superior person that you are actually coming from. Devotional service unto the Supreme Lord is the highest form of life, is the highest means of living. Devotional service is actually what we are here for, what we're meant for, right? So, food consciousness, people consciousness, society consciousness. Then we understand we are the soul. And the highest consciousness is understand we are the servant of God. Right? So Vedanta acknowledges this as well. Right? There is oneness. So here we see that, we talked about the fact that, impersonalism refers to the fact that, everybody is God and everybody's the same person, oneness, right? Vedanta also acknowledges, but in a different way, right? There is oneness between the absolute truth and in this world, right? So what is nature? What is the nature of that? So there is a radical difference between Vaishnava commentators and Advaitic commentators for this. So, but Vaishnava commentators look at oneness in variety. Even though we are different, we are same, we are also, similar to each other, we are different. We are like a drop in the ocean. We are children of God. We inherit His qualities, some of His qualities, in minute proportions. If you take a drop out of the ocean and test its properties, it has the properties of the ocean. But is the drop the ocean? No. The ocean is vast. It's oceanic, right? It's complete, right? So similarly, right, the absolute truth is, Janmadhyasyataha, that which is the source of everything. Right? Krishna says he's the source of everything, Bhagavad Gita. Aham sarvasya prabho, matta sarvam pravartate. I am the source of everything, everything emanates from me. The demigods come from Krishna. The avatars of the Lord come from Krishna. Brahma, Shiva come from him. Right? And, we see everything comes from God. Right? But when somebody might ask, where does God come from if everything comes from God? But that question itself is not a correct question. It's like, it's like asking somebody to make a square circle. Does it exist? No. Right. Similarly, we could see that God consciousness is, when we're talking about God, He's always there. He's always existent. We can't talk about the origin of God if He's already there and everything comes from Him. So, one thing to take away from this is that Krishna is known as Govinda, His Supreme Personality of Godhead. He has an eternal spiritual blissful body, and He's the origin of all. He has no other origin, and He's a prime cause of all causes. Yeah. So this, we can just read the translations of the next two verses really quick, and we'll wrap up. That's fine. Go ahead. Somebody else can read.
O Brahma, whatever appears to be of any value, it is without relation to me, has no reality. Know it as my illusory energy, that reflection which appears to be in darkness.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
O Brahma, please know that the universal elements enter into the cosmos and at the same time do not enter into the cosmos. Similarly, I myself also exist within everything created, and at the same time I am outside of everything.
Yep. Here we saw, a topic about illusory energy, and that refers to the fact that anything that is not dovetailed with the whole, Anything that is not associated with Krishna is Maya, right? It's illusory, right? So when we're understanding that everything is coming from Krishna, we'll live in a manner that we're utilizing everything in the service of Krishna, right? If we don't do that, then it's Maya. Right? So lastly, to quickly conclude, we have many takeaways here. One, we should understand that everything comes from Krishna, who is supreme, and Krishna is nothing like us. He can be within, without. He can do things which can be only understood by a pure devotee and no mental speculators, right? You can't speculate. The negation of this world is simply not spiritual world, right? He has so many inconceivable potencies that cannot be understood by a person who has imperfect senses. And we are qualitatively resembling certain features of the Lord, like water droplets in the ocean, but the Lord possesses 6 opulences that are an oceanic quantity in full. We are like a drop in the ocean, but the Lord is like the ocean. There is no beginning and end to the Lord, and whatever appears to be of any value, if it is without relation to the Lord, it is a product of his illusory energy, Maya. And one can perfect his life by practicing devotional service and viewing everything in relation to the Lord, Supreme Lord Sri Krishna. Surrendering unto Krishna will amplify the ability of a person. Right? So dovetail with the complete whole, perform devotional service, chant, and be happy. Chanting is the only way out. And when you chant, you're able to understand that you are not this body but the soul, and your prime duty is a servant of the Lord, and that is perfect realization. Haribol. Hare Krishna. Any questions that I can address? Sure, Prabhu. That's fine. That's fine. Yeah. Thank you, Prabhu. Yeah. Hare Krishna. Jai.